Circleville, Ohio, a quaint town just 25 miles south of Columbus, where neighbors know each other by name and a sense of safety permeates daily life. Every October, the community comes together for its annual pumpkin festival, drawing crowds with its record-breaking gourds and famous pumpkin pie. But in the late 1970s, Circleville's Rockwellian image began to crack. An anonymous figure emerged, sending cruel and threatening letters that accused residents of shocking misdeeds, including an alleged affair between two locals. The fallout from these letters would upend lives, resulting in the wrongful imprisonment of one man and possibly costing another his life.
The year is 1976. School bus driver Mary Gillespie came home from work and received an anonymous letter accusing her of having an affair with the superintendent of schools, Gordon Massey. Both Gillespie and Massey were married to other people and had children. Surely an affair like this would be scandalous anywhere, let alone a small town. The letter read, "I know where you live. I've been observing your house and know you have children. This is no joke. Please take it serious." There were no clues as to who the letter could be from. They were written in block letters, postmarked from Columbus with no return address. 8 days later, Mary received another letter. She chose to ignore it and not to tell her husband, Ron Gillespie. But it didn't take long before Ron began receiving letters of his own. In the letter to Ron, the writer warned him that if he didn't do something to stop the alleged affair, that his own life would be in danger.
Gordon Massey received his own letters accusing him of asking female bus drivers on dates behind his wife's back, even going into specific details about which bus drivers Massey was flirting with. The letter writer threatened to have his tires slashed and his brakes cut if he didn't stop having an affair, and even suggested that he go find himself a pimple-faced whore. Now, it's important to note that these weren't the only people in Circleville receiving threatening letters. Politicians, newspapers, businesses, residents also received letters, not just about the alleged Gillespie-Massey affair, but other local scandals and gossip. But for whatever reason, the letter writer from the beginning was particularly set on bringing down Mary Gillespie and Gordon Massey. Mary and Ron decided to confide in Ron's sister Karen, her husband Paul Freshour, and Paul's sister about what was going on. They decided to write their own letter, telling this person they know who they are. If you're familiar with this case from Unsolved Mysteries, you may have wondered when watching this episode, who exactly are they sending this to? The show didn't go into any explanation as to who the Gillespies and Freshours thought the letter writer could be, but from the beginning, Mary had suspected that another bus driver, David Longberry, had been the letter writer all along. He had allegedly expressed romantic interest in her, and she had rejected him. They wrote to Longberry, and for a few weeks the letters had stopped, but soon there would be a turn for the worst.
On August 9th, 1977, while Mary was in Florida, Ron was at home in Circleville with their children and received a phone call. No one knows what the caller had said to Ron, but whatever it was enough to make him leave the house abruptly and take his gun. With a short distance from the house, Ron lost control of his car, hit a tree, and was killed. Somewhere in between leaving the house and hitting the tree, his gun had fired one shot, although it's not clear at who, where, or why. It was later discovered that Ron had a .16 blood alcohol level when he died, which in Ohio at the time was 1.5 times higher than the legal limit. Those who knew him were surprised by this. He wasn't a heavy drinker, and his children didn't think he appeared to be drunk when he left the house. Pickaway County Sheriff Dwight Radcliff ruled Ron's death an accident, but soon residents began receiving letters that Radcliff was perpetrating a cover-up.
6 years after Ron's death, the letters still continued. Superintendent Gordon Massey and Mary eventually did confirm a relationship, but maintained that it had only started after the letters began and after Ron's death. Some theorized that this was maybe her way of trying to confess that they were in a relationship without flat out saying that the two were cheating. We don't know. Throughout all this, Mary kept her job as a school bus driver to support her family. In 1983, the letter writer began putting up vile signs along her bus route. When Mary came across a sign that had accused Massey of raping her 12-year-old daughter, she had had enough. When she took down the sign, she found a box, some string, and a post attached to the fence post. She opened up the box where she found a pistol inside. She realized that this was a poorly made booby trap designed to fire the gun at her. There had been an amateur attempt to rub the serial number off the gun, but when lab tests were able to raise it again, they discovered that the gun had belonged to Mary's brother-in-law, Paul Freshour, who had just split up from Ron's sister Karen. Paul claimed that he hadn't seen the gun for a while and had no reason to check on it. It's not clear if when he said that he hadn't seen it for a while that he just hadn't been in possession of it for a while, like a passport that you keep away unless you're traveling, or if it had disappeared and he just hadn't seen it because it was gone. It's important to understand a little bit of Paul and Karen Freshour's relationship. Around this time, they had been going through a pretty nasty divorce. Karen had cheated on Paul, but Paul had also been allegedly beating her. Paul had gained custody of the kids during the divorce, but supposedly their son Mark was afraid of his father and wanted to live with Karen instead. Paul comes across as very gentle and mild-mannered during his interview on Unsolved Mysteries. However, behind closed doors, this was not a very happy family.
Paul was called in for questioning and a handwriting test. Sheriff Radcliff had only told him that the gun was missing and somehow linked to the actual Circleville letters. Next, Paul was told to copy as closely as possible the handwriting of the letters. This is not the proper protocol for conducting a handwriting test. If someone is told to mimic the handwriting, of course it's going to resemble the original. It seems like this was the way for Radcliff to be able to say that the letters weren't definitively written by Paul, but that they could have been. Lastly, Paul showed the sheriff his house, where he kept the gun in the garage. It was only when they returned to the courthouse. The prosecutor was called in and was told that it was Paul's handwriting on the booby trap. Paul was then told by the prosecutor that there was a booby trap found and he was under arrest for the attempted murder of Mary Gillespie. This is despite none of his fingerprints being found on the booby trap or the gun. In October 1983, Paul went on trial for attempted murder. Even though he wasn't charged with actually writing the letters, they became crucial evidence used against him during the trial. The letters that had been dictated to Paul where he did the handwriting test were used in comparison of the actual letters, and a handwriting expert determined that they matched and were from the same person. But again, it's important to remember, the handwriting test was pretty much botched from the start.
During her testimony, Mary indicated that Paul's ex-wife Karen said that she thought Paul was involved in the letters and the signs. The day that Mary had found the booby trap, Paul wasn't working, though he did have an alibi for where he was, but it didn't matter. At the advice of his attorney, he didn't take the stand in his defense, which he later deeply regretted. Paul Freshour was found guilty by the jury. He was sentenced to the max for attempted murder, 7 to 25 years. Everyone assumed he had written the letters, and with him behind bars, they would stop. The letters continued. It didn't make sense how, from prison, Paul could have been able to send those letters. Following complaints from Radcliff, Paul was soon placed in solitary confinement, yet the letters still continued. After 7 years in prison, Paul was eligible for parole. The volume of letters increased dramatically in the weeks leading up to his hearing. The letters were all postmarked Columbus, even though Paul was in Lima, Ohio, 200 miles away. Despite the mounting evidence that the letters couldn't have been from him, and despite being a model prisoner, he was denied parole. The letter writer soon wrote to Paul, taunting him. "Now when are you going to believe that you aren't getting out of there? I told you 2 years ago, when we set them up, they stay set up. Don't you listen at all? No one wants you out. No one. The joke is on you. Ha? Ha."
Multiple investigations were conducted. The warden of the prison even wrote a letter to Karen to say that as far as he was concerned, it was impossible for Paul to have written the letters and be sending them out. When journalist Martin Yant reviewed the sheriff's investigative file, he found evidence that was kept out of the trial which he believed may have kept Paul out of prison entirely. For example, Mary told Sheriff Radcliff that another bus driver had been driving that same route 20 minutes before Mary found the booby trap, and when she drove by the intersection, there was a yellow El Camino parked there. A man with sandy hair was there, and when he saw her drive by, he turned around and acted like he was using the bathroom. The description of the man does not fit Paul, and remember, Paul had a strong alibi for this time during the day.
There was zero attempt to follow up on this lead, and if investigators had, they would have found out that another possible suspect had a brother who had a yellow El Camino and whose boyfriend matched the description of the man seen and whose brother had also driven an El Camino. That other possible suspect was Karen Freshour. But police chose not to follow up on this. In May 1994, Paul was granted parole after serving 10 years in prison. He had always maintained his innocence. Paul died in 2012 at the age of 70. Ron's death remains a mystery. Who set the booby trap has never been found, and the letter writer, or writers, have also never been located. Residents of Circleville stopped receiving letters around 1994.
All right, so a couple of theories on, all the different parts of this case.
Lot of moving parts.
Some people think that Paul was responsible for the letters.
That's what Radcliff seems to think.
Right. And of course he went to jail for them, so,
Oh, Paul, yeah. And he definitely wrote them from solitary confinement, because that's a thing that you're capable of doing.
Yep.
Another theory is that Karen did these letters by herself. I mean, it would make sense, like, if she was living in that house, she would know where the gun is.
Yeah. We'll get into it, but yes, that is definitely, like, makes a lot of sense to me. And yeah, when Paul goes to jail and someone else is still writing the letters, anyway.
My thing with this case, I don't want to make it seem like I hate women.
I don't
I can't see a man doing it.
Here's the thing. I don't think that, yes, I think that...
I know some catty bitches.
I also don't want it to come across like everyone hates people named Karen, but unfortunately it is a meme. And
it's a meme for a reason.
I think it's a meme for a reason. Karen's since the dawn of time, or since the dawn of Circleville. I think, to me, just I'll be just frank. I think that's my favorite theory. Is it's all Karen, and I don't think that it's anti-woman to think that. Paul went to jail for it, and I don't think Paul was completely innocent.
But I guess, like, what would be the motive for Paul and Karen to start doing it? I do wonder. So Mary and Ron's original theory was that one bus driver, David Longberry, had started it because he was had started writing the letters because he was rejected by Mary, and then just like, I can see like an incel doing that. And then little fun fact about David Longberry, he was a fugitive in 1999 for R-ing a little girl and then killed himself while on the run. So, good guy.
He seems like he was, a lot of stuff was plaguing him. Maybe one of those things was Ron Gillespie's death.
Like, maybe he knew about the affair between Gordon Massey and what's her name? Mary. And Mary Gillespie, and then was like, well, she'll cheat on Gordon, but not me.
Right.
Like,
right. And that's totally possible. But why do all of the signs point to Karen? Like, why does it feel that way?
I am really curious what the motive would be to destroy her in-laws' life. And I mean, like, I understand if you have a husband who's, I mean, maybe Paul wasn't like the best guy if he was beating her up and stuff. I see the motive to want to destroy his life. I don't understand, and like, I'm sure it's a small town. I'm sure there's a lot that we're not completely getting the full story on, but I'm curious, like, where the Gillespies come in with that. Hey everyone, this is Future Chell doing some editing here. Pooja and I have another theory that we didn't mention during our recording, so I'd like to bring up those additional points now. We have a theory about Karen's possible motive for wanting to murder Mary, if Karen was indeed one of the letter writers and the mastermind behind the attempt on Mary Gillespie's life. Was Karen angry at Mary over the death of her brother Ron? While Mary, of course, didn't kill her husband, the phone call that Ron received the night that he died was likely regarding her alleged affair, which drove him to confront the caller, ultimately leading to his fatal truck crash. As you may recall, the letter writer accused Sheriff Radcliff of covering up Ron's death, suggesting they believed it was more than just a drunk driving accident. Was the booby trap a way for Karen to accomplish two things at once? Get revenge on Mary for inadvertently causing her brother's death while framing her ex-husband for it by using his gun? Just wanted to add in that little piece there since it maybe adds up some possible motive if Karen and her crew were the ones who set up the booby trap. Now let's get back to the discussion.
A lot of moving parts to this one, and I think it's like, well, honestly, I think that's part of this case. There's always a part of me in the back of my mind with this case where I'm like, were all of the parts that happened related? Like, was it just a coincidence? Small town?
That's a really good point. I think, like, people of the town just got wind of what was happening and then jumped on the bandwagon to start sending these letters. That seems like the most sense, like, that makes the most sense to me.
Can we also talk about how weird the voice of the letters is?
So I had read that investigators did think that it was someone who was uneducated who had written them.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I remember specifically, like, the first one I think says, please take it serious, like, instead of seriously.
Right. Or take this seriously. Like, it didn't feel like, I mean, maybe English has changed in the last 40 years. It didn't feel like someone, like, who speaks fluently.
Yeah. And maybe you could say that they were trying to make it sound, like, disguise their voice or something, but...
Something.
There was another point in the case against K-Dog, Karen.
We're shorthanding our murderers.
So, Karen had visited Paul's sister while the divorce proceedings were underway. She asked to borrow Paul's typewriter, which he had loaned to his sister. Around this time, some of the Circleville letters had arrived typed instead of handwritten, which could have been an attempt by Karen to incriminate Paul by, like, using his own typewriter. But,
yeah, another thing that kind of feels very Karen-y, you know? not in the cultural sense, but, like, points to Karen.
Can we talk about the sheriff being, like, a complete... If we're going to talk about the Uncle Bob's rating...
Uncle Bob's rating.
I give Sheriff Radcliff a strong 1 out of 5 Uncle Bob's.
What I always think about with Sheriff Radcliff being... You know, 1 out of
5 Uncle Bob's.
1 out of 5 Bobs.
Would that be your rating too?
Yeah, because here's the thing. I keep thinking, like, small town vibes. It's the 80s, like, corrupt cops. It's the 80s. That's sort of the 80s.
70s, 80s.
70s,
yeah.
80s.
Yeah. I think, Paul went to prison in the 80s because he got out in 94.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And this all started in, like, in the late 70s. I think, I just get this feeling that, maybe he had some kind of, like, undisclosed vendetta against Paul that, like, again, small town things. Like, I've never heard of Circleville, Ohio until this case.
So I had read that Radcliff was up for running in an election for the National Sheriff's Association. And so maybe, like, a scandal like this doesn't look good on you if you can't get your town in order.
But did he get the town in order? Those
No,
letters kept going.
But, like, you see it all the time where cops just want to put someone away.
Yeah.
And case closed and, like, oh, I solved it, guys. I solved the crime. The letter writer had bones to pick with Radcliff, too, because they called him out for covering up Ron's death.
And isn't that weird?
Yeah.
It's a little funny that the letter writer suddenly has a conscience, which goes back to my earlier point. Maybe they're not connected.
I don't think they are. I think here's Rachel's hot take.
Oh God.
Longberry writes the first one. He's a jealous little incel, and he's pissed off that Mary and Gordon Massey are, like, you know, doing the dirty. So then maybe he would want, like, him telling Ron, like, you got to do something about your wife or your life is in danger. Like, maybe that's his way of trying to end it, like the affair. I don't know. But I get they kept it pretty secret until they told the Freshours.
Right.
And then the Freshhours were like, we know who you are. Or the family wrote back to Longberry and said, we know who you are. And then Ron died, right?
Right.
And then that's when it, like, oh, my other favorite thing, Gordon Massey and Karen Gillespie admitting, like, oh, well, we started dating after the letter.
Oh,
like,
Mary, yeah,
right.
Yeah. Which is, so convenient.
I would love to know what the bus drivers in this town look like.
Wait, and also, like, are they school bus drivers?
Yeah.
This is crazy.
So there's
because he's the superintendent of schools.
Exactly. So there's one the Unsolved Mysteries episode is one of the only ones I could think of where they didn't, aside from Paul Freshour, they didn't show pictures of Mary or Ron Gillespie. There is a picture of Mary online. It's a nice picture. She's a decent looking lass. But I would love to know what the bus drivers in this town look like, because not to be disrespectful or anything, but like I pictured them looking like Rosie O'Donnell. I don't know if I've
Rachel,
ever seen
anybody can fall in love. Anybody can fall in love, Rachel.
But like they're acting like this is like Miami or something.
It's their Miami. They're in Circleville, Ohio. They don't know anything about Miami. The club is the school bus.
Maybe. I just no disrespect to Rosie O'Donnell either.
Or school bus drivers.
They got us from point.
Let us know if you have a hot school bus driver that we should know about.
Seatbelts, everyone!
But isn't that such a weird, like, profession to have this scandal of...
I think it is weird. I never even thought about school bus drivers before this, you know? Like, I mean, I thought that they were great people that got me to school and back again. I never thought about the inner workings of their life and whether or not they were cheating on their husband. Can we talk about Karen's boyfriend's brother?
Yeah.
In the yellow Camino?
Yeah, so... Interesting if that were him setting up the booby trap that the bus driver before Mary had seen on her route.
Yeah.
Like, this is like a multi-layered murder attempt, right?
Also, before we get to that, yes, exactly. That, true. How does this booby trap work?
Okay, so
Sorry for the art in the background.
So, I think, like, when she opened it, it was supposed to shoot her. But because she like took it off, she was able to dismantle it and it didn't shoot her. One thing that's a little sus about Paul, I mean, some people are just not. I think I'm a very organized person. If I had a fucking gun, I think I would know where that is.
Yeah. Yeah. But
yeah. I'm also organized, and maybe other people just like...
You also don't live in an area where most people have a gun. Like, I feel like Ohio, especially this small town in Ohio in the 80s, like, maybe most people have a gun. And, like, it is kind of just like, oh, I don't know, it's in the drawer of my study. Like, I never have to take it out. Like,
yeah, like, you just...
It's just hard for me. At the same time as I'm saying I think Karen wrote the letters, it is hard for me to reconcile her wanting to kill somebody.
That's what's really... Because the booby trap was set on Mary Gillespie. And this is why maybe she just didn't have a good relationship with them, and she saw that, like, this was a way to get her husband... This was, like, her plan to get her husband in jail. Maybe. But if it were Karen doing this, there does have to be... You do have to question, why would she want Mary dead? And, like, how bad was their marriage that first they're working together to help her brother-in-law, or her brother and her sister-in-law, and then within the span of however long it was, she's like, nope, they're dead. When
Karen and Paul get the divorce, was it still common for men to get custody over women?
I don't think it was ever.
It was not like women
I
are
feel
usually...
like women were usually the ones to get the kids.
That was what I thought. I do think maybe, like, it's just curious that Paul got custody.
Yeah, that is that is a very interesting thing to note, that, like, he would get it over. And then that one of the kids just wouldn't want to go with. So, like, why would why would they be sent to the dad anyway if the kid is like, I don't want to go with him?
Right. And makes you, like, again, Sheriff Radcliff, why didn't you look at the divorce proceedings before making your final call? Don't know. Are you still alive?
What's that?
I'm asking Sheriff Radcliff if he's still
Sheriff Radcliff. I think he's dead now. Actually, let's look it up.
Oh, he did.
Oh, yeah, he died in 2020.
Oh, my God, he died in 2020.
You think he died of COVID?
He died at a hospital. Wow, my God, he died.
I get the impression that he just wanted the case to be done with. I don't know if it was necessarily a vendetta against Paul. I think it was more just like he was doing a bad job as a...
Yeah, he made Paul copy the handwriting.
Yeah. That's...
terrible.
I remember even being a kid and saying, like, that doesn't make sense.
Doesn't check out.
Do you remember when there was a bomb threat to Grover?
Whoa. Actually, yes.
Yeah, I remember we had to, write about... I think someone wrote on, like, the stalls, like, I'm going to blow up the school or something. And we had to write... like what we were looking forward to about Christmas break because it was around the holidays, and then nothing ever came of it. But we weren't told what was happening. I get it's different when you're in middle school versus when you know that like your brother-in-law was killed. But but I would assume that you would like the best way to go about it would be to just see how this person writes and then see if there are any similarities.
Right.
In 2021. A document examiner was hired by CBS to compare the Circleville letters that were sent to Paul Freshour's known handwriting. And she found a number of links between the two, particularly like how he wrote numbers. But she did say that there were patterns in the letters, the Circleville letters, that didn't match Paul's handwriting. Found more than 100 quirks of Paul's that did match. So... it does make sense that Paul, like, had some level of involvement.
Yeah.
But I don't think... there's no way that he could have just... there's no way he could have written them from solitary confinement. It's safe to say that this is an emotionally charged case. The opening of the Unsolved Mysteries episode begins with... check it out if you ever get a chance. I mean, it's on YouTube, so it's not that hard to find. But Robert Stack says that they received a letter themselves, like the show received a letter themselves. And it says, like, you Sickos Will Pay for writing Circleville, for writing about Circleville. And I think that is a perfect example of, like, because they used to record in the town. So I think like someone got wind of it and then just wrote to Unsolved Mysteries, which I think further supports that this was just everyone in the town just writing a bunch of letters. Like you want to air out your grievances to someone and write some letters. I think the reason why Gordon Massey and Mary Gillespie, I don't know why I can't remember her name whenever I'm saying it.
Forgettable, huh?
I think why they seem to be so targeted originally by the Circleville letters is because they were the original targets of who started it.
Right. Yep. No, exactly. That letter, it's like, what are you saying? I just think that it, like, that sounds like it came from someone who knew something, and there is some, someone who started it, someone who continued it, and then a whole bunch of other people that were just supporting it.
And in the argument that Karen had some involvement, I mean, who else would know that Paul was in solitary?
Exactly.
Because the warden had sent a letter to her, like, it definitely can't be him. There's no way letters are getting in and out. Like, she knew.
Mm-hmm. But also not smart move on her part if she was trying to frame Paul.
Yeah. But, I mean, nothing happened. I mean, he got out after 10 years, but if she wanted to get back at him, like, she did a good job at that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not like she... What did that letter say, that last letter?
I told you 2 years ago, when we set them up, they stay set up. Don't you listen at all? No one wants you out. No one. The joke is on you. Ha, ha.
So
Was that scary? Did I do a good job?
That's clearly a bitter ex-wife.
Yeah. I can't see someone who doesn't have any emotional attachment to this man, whether or not it's like you're angry.
Yeah.
It's an angry attachment.
Yeah.
Or not. Sending a letter like that. I can't picture like Jackie Schmo, their neighbor, being like, Paul's fucking loser. He's still in jail.
Yeah, it's just a bitter ex-wife. Like, it feels like, why would you send this letter? When are you going to believe that you aren't getting out of there? Why? How does she know that he's not believing that he you know what I mean? She's like creating this narrative in her head of what Paul is like doing in jail.
It's very manipulative, and it's assuming that he thinks that he's not getting out. And
this like, what is this letter about? Like, it's about him.
Yeah.
It's not about anything. It's not about the crime. It has nothing to do with Ron dying. That line, I told you 2 years ago, when we set him up, they stayed set up. What is that? What are they?
I think that's in reference. I think the timeline is maybe like when he was on trial, but yeah, like what's going on behind closed doors there is that, like,
what did they set up?
Yeah.
Like a team of letter writers? I don't, what, like, it's just such a cryptic, weird note that doesn't like have anything to do with the crime, really, or where the letters originated from. Like, it's kind of like this letter writer got bored with the gossip of the town's affairs.
Who do you think killed Ron? Because we have Paul and Karen doing whatever dance they're doing. Mm-hmm. And then we have Mary and Gordon Ramsay allegedly having an affair.
It's not Gordon Ramsay.
Wait, did I say Gordon?
Come on.
Let's end on this note. Who killed Ron? And why? Well, why? The why may lead to the who. But it doesn't necessarily have to, right?
Well, before we get started, Ron crashed his car and that's what killed him.
Right.
So it wasn't like someone pew-pewed him.
Right.
But he shot his gun at someone. I could see it being Longberry.
Sure.
Like, who is, somehow involved with Mary's affair and is threatening her husband.
Which would maybe explain, no, I wonder if there was like a gap between Ron's death and the next letter. Because I wonder if David wrote the first letter, mm-hmm. if he got scared by the gunshot, and then just like abandoned ship, and then, Yeah, because we have, so it was 6 years between Ron's death and when the booby trap was set. Okay, that's a long time.
So that's plenty of time for Longberry to just GTFO and then like someone else take on the role of the letter writer.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. It's hard to say.
This one's really, really complicated.
It is. There's so many moving parts. Like,
I feel like it's very simple and very complicated at the same time.
Yeah, I came here today. Ready to stand by my Karen accusation, and I've somehow wound up believing that this was a community affair. Yeah,
it's kind of quaint, if you will.
One person died, but I feel like he was getting cheated on, and that sucks.
That does suck. I wonder if he knew. I'm curious what Ron's awareness about Mary's alleged affair was. Like, what their marriage was like.
Yeah. What about the superintendent's wife?
They were going through a divorce too.
Yeah.
So there's a theory that that Gordon Massey, not Gordon Ramsay, that Gordon Massey's son was mad at his dad for the divorce and like was trying to frame him. I don't really know if that one holds water. It seems like it seems like, if anything, that it was a town affair perpetrated by Longberry starting it, and then Paul and Karen, for whatever reason, doing their own letters and then winding up hating each other in the process.
It's, yeah. I mean, that's what happens when you're bored.
That's what happens in small towns. I think we should wrap this up.
Let's wrap this up.
Karen did it. Well, maybe. I think she's dead, so I don't think it matters.
I don't think it matters.
I don't want to get sued, but...
Sued by who?
Karen.
Oh. I think, like, Karen, if she's alive, like, won't at this point be put in jail for something like this.
I'm sure the statute of limitations on attempted murder.
Yeah.
If we had an intern, we'd have them look that up.
Next season we'll have an intern. But for now, let's wrap up this circle of Circleville, Ohio, and the letters in it.
Let's. Well, thank you for watching, everyone. We know that one was a bit of a doozy of an episode, but we hope you enjoyed it. We hope you learned a little bit about this homegrown murder mystery.
We'll see you in the next episode. Let us know if you have any suggestions, as always, for topics for us to cover. Until next time, we'll meet you in the dark.